Okay, so as you can see what we got here today, I want to give a couple of reminders out to people and some clarifications as well, and then we're going to get into our lecture. One reminder, I will only respond to SCC emails, so please do not use your private emails. That is an SCC policy for instructors. That is to ensure that we don't have any gateway to any type of malware or worms or anything that could damage our system. Next, please remember, no Google Docs. I know that's hard for many of our high school students because that's the way you kind of have been raised. And Google Docs are good. We just don't use them at this college. In fact, very few colleges use them. In fact, the only college I know that does is NC State. Every other college university pretty much is just still sticking to the Microsoft products. So the easiest way to upload a product, a document, is to save it as a PDF. And that's going to be really important when we're working on PowerPoints. So always save everything as a PDF before you upload it, and it will always upload a lot faster. Okay, now the orientation quiz to stay in the class must be completed on the 26th. If you have not done it, then I have to drop you. Now, there is a plagiarism statement in there. If you get that wrong, let me repeat that. If you get that wrong on the orientation quiz, we got a problem, because that is your commitment to statement that you are going to abide by ethical means for completing this course and for public speaking. So keep that in mind, and if you did get it wrong, you need to send me an email right away. Okay, now your elevator outlines. You do not need to do, or you did not need to do, any audio or video of the elevator speech, okay? The reason for that is that it's your low stakes attempt at doing an outline. And many of you spent the weekend with me on and off email exchanging what you were working on, and I love that. I love that, love that, love that. Always feel comfortable sending me drafts, and I will give you feedback, all right? Because the methodology is very scientific. It's actually doing a cybernetic processing in the brain that prepares you when you are delivering a speech to have an amazing recall of the content for your delivery, all right? This is a part of neurolinguistics. It works, and so that's why I am extremely picky about how to do your outlines. So we're going to have a steep learning curve. Don't let it discourage you, because we're going to get you so that it becomes second nature for you, and you're going to love it by the end of the course. Okay, so I am going to spend this afternoon and tomorrow giving you very detailed feedback on the documents that you submit, all right? If you did not follow the template that I gave you in the orientation section, there's going to be a lot of color markings on your outline. This is not to discourage you. This is to teach you. So my husband used to coach high school varsity football for a whole lot of years with very successful teams. And he was an offensive and defensive line coach. And when he would make the players run, they started to, because they had a 46-game winning streak in Southern California football. They started to, he made a comment to them one time. He said, when they were complaining about doing the wind sprints, he'd say, "Hey, all of you should be thanking me right now for making you run." And so once one of the players, big old, inside backer kind of guy, said, "Thank you, coach." And then he said, "Oh, I can't hear you." And he said, "Thank you, coach, for making me better." Well, that became the mantra for all of those players. And many of those players went on to play at University of Southern California, Colorado State, UCLA, one went to Michigan, all this kind of stuff. So I'm not doing this to be mean. It may look like I'm mean, but I'm only 4'10". I am not a mean person. I care. So when you see all of the ugly marks on there, just say, okay, she's trying to make me better. She's trying to make me better. Okay. Now, that means then don't do your special occasion outline until I give you the feedback. Yours is due on the 30th. Now, it is a draft. All right. Now, my policy is that a draft should be about 90 to 95% really there. Okay. Not 50% and not half-assed 20%. Okay. It needs to be about 90 to 95%. Oh yeah, I'm good. I can get an A on this one. All right. Because again, I'm going to be really picky on it. So when you turn that in on the 30th, it's going to be a draft, all right? And I'm going to give you feedback for you to upload a better copy for actual grade, all right? So that's the way that process is going to work. Any questions about the madness of my methodology? Nope, we're good? You guys are being easy today. Okay. All right. I'm going to transition now into the history of rhetoric in probably 15 minutes or less, or maybe a minute or two more. Okay. Just like I talked about the process of communication and all the complexities of sender, receiver, and the psychology and the noise and all that stuff, so too do we need to understand rhetoric. And we're going to understand it not from a heavy philosophical standpoint, like you would in a philosophy course, but we need to understand it from a public discourse perspective. Now, we are Western thinkers. That doesn't make us better than Eastern thinkers. It simply means that through the generations and generations of who we are today, we have acquired our thinking skills as part of our survival of the fittest to be what is collectively known as Western thinking. And it pretty much evolved out of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, about 500, 600 BC, BCE, before the Common Era, and then was kind of co-opted, stolen by the Romans. And then we went on and we had some great influencers from Spain, and then we went on and got some more German philosophers who added more to it, etc. And then we went into England, etc. Today I'm going to focus only on the ancient Greeks, all right? Because from the foundation, you can understand critical, rhetorical thinking as an audience member, as well as a developer of a speech, all right? Last week was the Democratic National Convention. This week is the Republican National Convention. What I want you to do is reflect on last week. If you watch this week, is to identify something known as sophistry. So we're going to start there. I'm going to put it in big, ugly red. Right? And the word sophomore, or if somebody was just being a sophomore status in a high school or college, that's pretty good. You're, you know, one step over frosh, another closer to being senior. But a phrase, if anybody says this to you, they are not complimenting you. If a person ever says you are being so sophomoric, all right, so sophomoric, that is from this. It means you are not fully mature. You are not operating at a level of sophistication that you should be at, all right? And that plays into our ancient Greeks. Okay, so what happened is, if you've studied any world history, you know that, ancient world history, you know that the Greeks were amazing thinkers. And they had a system of politics that was highly patriarchal. So that part I didn't like, bunch of men, right? But still, it was the times. So highly patriarchal. And it was also the haves and the have-nots. So the haves were the people who had money, who had wealth, who had land, who had all those things. And then everybody else, okay? So that's not the good part about this. The good part about this is that they created a precursor to the government that we have today. And it's really looking at the Senate, and that there was a civil responsibility for all men who had wealth, power, status, etc., to have speaking skills, to be able to orate, O-R-A-T-E, to orate in front of others, to persuade, okay, to persuade. So when we talk about rhetoric, rhetoric simply means the art, all right, some science to it, but it's really an art, it's a gift of persuasion. All right, the art of persuasion, the art of rhetoric. Now, during this time, 600, 500 before the Common Era, that's a long time ago, all right, there were teachers who got paid good money to teach those boys and men to be eloquent speakers, to be good speakers, to be persuasive speakers, etc. All right? And there were two types of schools. There was this school, and then there was a school that came out of some amazing thinkers, and we're not going to go through all of those, but we are going to start with Socrates. Oh, we got to put Socrates in a pretty blue. All right? And there were other thinkers who subscribed to the Socratic method. All right? The Socratic method was to ask why. Why does somebody believe something? Why does somebody need something? Why does somebody feel a certain way? Why does anything, all right? Why does the sky look blue, all right? So everything was a series of questions. And the more you ask questions, the more learned you became, the more ability you were to be persuasive because you had knowledge. So that was really, really good basic knowledge, all right? Contrary to this school were the sophists, all right? The sophists. And the sophists didn't care about intellect. They weren't asking these questions. They were focused on the show. What showman or showwoman or show person techniques could you use to get the audience's attention and to razzle dazzle them, to persuade them with methodologies that was not grounded in substance, but was grounded in a person's abilities to use their voice, to use hand gestures, to paint visual pictures with words. And so sophistry, the bottom line is that it wasn't about substance. It also, remember when I talked yesterday, the last class, about intent and means and ends? The show didn't care so much about the intent, because that's getting into the whys. All they cared about were the ends. Get to the ends at any result you can. So this is what we don't want to be. As Western thinkers, as we take a look, sure, there might be some eloquence, there might be some use of body language, there might be a lot of those kinds of techniques. But if the core substance, the message, does not have the meaning in there that's for the good, hear that? For the good, then it should be discounted or dismissed or perceived as charlatans, okay? A charlatan, all show and no substance. Socrates, however, like many great people, was killed. He knew he was going to be killed, so he drank a glass of hemlock, all right, and killed himself rather than be killed. And he was highly feared by people who were up here, okay? But he had this amazing student, some of these names I know you know, and one of his students was Plato. Now Plato, another great thinker. As a student, he learned much from Socrates. But for Plato, he said, I'm going to expand this. So he took the whys and he said, what we got to do is we have to look at the logic. All right? What makes sense? What is reasonable understanding of the answers? And for Plato, it was all to be in search of the, capital T, truth, capital T. So you ask the questions to get at the heart of where is truth. And very much for Plato, because of the logic approach, is that it was facts. What was observable? If I drop this pen, it's a fact it's going to drop. All right? That's an observable fact. We can ask why, and eventually somebody will figure out it has to do with gravity. All right? But we have to ask that question and keep asking until we find truth. Okay? Plato was a good guy. He had a contemporary who's actually my favorite philosopher and my favorite rhetorician and my favorite who I have studied the most. So he had a contemporary, also a student of the Socratic method, the whys, who also agreed with Plato and logic, but he added more to it, right? And that's Aristotle. Oh, be still my heart. I just love it. I've read his stuff, studied him in university, in my graduate studies, and he added components that really, really, really made sense. Now, I'm telling you, if you watch either convention, you're going to see this going on. You're going to see sophistry, unfortunately. All right? And Aristotle said, boo, that's no good. We must continue to ask the wise. We've got to be in search of truth. We have to look at the truth with a capital T in terms of facts. But he added some other components, all right? Now, in Greek, this is known as logos, okay? So Aristotle still believed in the logic or the logos. He also added credos. And in fact, if you remember the top section of your template for outlines, there is a statement, there's a label that says your credibility. That is from Aristotle. What credentials what education or what experience do you have to make you an expert on the topic? So he tells us you must establish your credibility. This is credos. Who are you? What kind of a person are you? Because Aristotle tells us we cannot separate the speaker and the message from the person themselves. If you try and focus only on the message and you don't look at the inside of the person, you are missing truth. Because if there is a disconnect between what a person says and the person's personhood, behaviors, then all you have is a sophist. So Aristotle says they've got to be together. You've got to be able to speak logically, and you have to have the credentials, the experience, the education, the training, the research, everything to validate that you have a right to speak about the topic that you have selected. Important, huh? So when you're doing your research for your speeches or for any class, for any term project, the quality of your research establishes and backs up your credibility. And you are always evaluating the credibility of a source. Okay? Now, he also gave us something called ethos. And ethos are the ethics, public speaking ethics. Again, this was in direct reaction to this school of teachers, to make sure that this won. In your guide that I've given you is the Credo, the National Communication Association Credo for Ethical Communication. And as I said to you, always go here. If in doubt, if you can't find it here, don't do it. Okay? The First Amendment of the United States protects our right to assemble and to speak. Very valuable, very important, right? It does not protect your ability or my ability to use words to harm others. Hate speech. That's not protected, right? If we are inciting hurt or harm for others, no. That's why the law is in a movie theater, dark movie theater, it is against the law to yell out fire. Because the result of that's going to be a stampede that will cause harm. Okay? All right. So ethos is the ethics that you used. It's the research that you select, that you present both sides of a story. Even as you're trying to persuade somebody, you are making sure that both sides of a story is honored and represented and understood. Even though you may want to emphasize one side more as the best avenue to take, because it might be the logical one for the greater good and truly answers the questions why and provides truth, right? But you're doing it in a manner where the data is logical, observable facts. Now, right now, you may think, well, come on, people. Ms. K, we're not doing anything with this. I have to give this to you at the foundation, at the beginning of our class, so that you can use this as you move forward here on out, on all your speeches. Don't take creative license, half-truths, plagiarism, all that. But now, I'm going to give you the reason why my heart just sings for Aristotle. And that's because he added the concept of the human condition. And he called that pathos. The pathetic, the sympathetic. Not the pathetic as in, oh, that's, pitiful, but as empathetic, all right? That you must recognize that within every audience member, there is not only the head, but there's also the heart. We are human thinking animals, but we are also emotionally driven, heart, relational people. And the lived experience or the human condition adds the humanity into public speaking. All right. Now, let me give you an example. My human condition, my lived experience is different from every one of you in that room. Now, I talked about it earlier as being the old white woman in the room. All right. My human condition was, I was asked on interviews back in the 1970s when I was interviewing for jobs that required me to travel all over the United States and some international. And the question was, who's going to take care of your children when you're out on the road? That's an illegal question to ask now. That's nobody's business. I'm there interviewing, knowing I have the answer to that question all taken care of. And would that question have been equally asked of a male applicant? The answer was no. So my human condition, based on my age, is different from a young person such as a young woman now going for a job interviewing that's going to have that kind of travel requirement, who will never be subjected to that kind of a question, but will recognize that I will get the job on the merits of who I am, and that's what I'm bringing to the party. Okay, so we all have human conditions. Racism is a human condition. Ethnicity, national origin, gender identification, all those things are all parts of it. We cannot lose sight of people. Cannot lose sight of people. They're human beings. They have hearts. They have feelings, right? So this is all of the history of rhetoric in 15 minutes. So later in the class, you're going to be asked to do some critical analysis of two speeches. One is an international one, and one is an American speech. And I'm going to ask you to bring this information forward. Bring it back. Use it. Okay? So when I ask you to analyze the speech, the message, what about the credibility of the individual? What about the logic that was utilized in the speaker? What research or data or proof are accessed and brought forward? And what pathos, human condition, are explained? Right? Because those are going to be in all of these, the why, are all going to be in those speeches. So as you are designing your own speech, and as you are critiquing other speeches, please, please, please keep your notes handy and start analyzing. Be a critical thinker as you are watching other speakers speak. Okay? So, given that, what I'd like to do is you can be redirected in your textbook if you want in section, we're in chapter 2, section 3. It talks about free speech. And I want to read to you the First Amendment. Okay, this is actually how it is stated. Okay, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free speech thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Oh my gosh. Is this Black Lives Matter right now or what? Is this what we have been seeing out there since May? This is why America is so awesome, is because we have the right to do that, unlike what's happening in Hong Kong. Okay, so very important, very powerful. Now, to wrap this up, I want to draw your attention to something else. Let's talk about your responsibility. We are looking at behaviors, what we are observable things that we can hear you say, as well as things that we can see you do, okay? We are looking for the behaviors where you are exhibiting what is right for yourself and others and not wrong. All right? So one of the things that our First Amendment is talking about is stating that you as a speaker are going to use responsible knowledge. So if you go to Brainy Quotes and you quote something by Mahatma Gandhi or by Martin Luther King or Jesus or anybody, your responsible knowledge of that information requires you to cite the source. Okay? That's part of what we're talking about for the code of ethics. You have to give credit to the source. When you can, Brainy Quotes is great, but if you can go and actually find the original quote from Gandhi that says, "Be the change you want to see in others," then you do what's called going to the original, we know it as primary speech or source or document, right? Brainy Quotes means it's been gone through a couple of iterations. By doing that, you are respecting the knowledge of others, and you are not being a thief. If you use information or a quote or data as if it's your own, then you are no better than a common thief, because you have literally stolen it from somebody else. Plagiarism. Okay? You're demonstrating your respect for the person of their ideas and their information. The other thing is for the good. All right, now I'm going to tell you right now, there are only a few speech topics that I will veto. And the reason I veto them is because I personally cannot, I personally veto because I have the power, all right, number one. And because because I have that power and I am so emotionally charged about certain topics, I have trouble seeing that there is a positive right or wrong. Now, I am pretty much a screaming liberal from California. You haven't figured that out already. With the exception of some issues. I absolutely believe in the right for people that have guns. I absolutely believe in that. Should I believe there should be more checks and, no assault rifles? Yes, okay. So, I mean, there's things that, I'm open to, but I cannot support capital punishment. I cannot support abortion, but I'm not going to hate anybody or embarrass somebody or tear them down for anybody who has elected to have an abortion, because those are personal choices. I think that education is the way to avoid it. But so there's going to be a few that I will veto, not many, not many. If you are selecting a topic because it's for the good, it's for the good of others, if it's for the good of society, if it's for the good of, whatever it is, then I can usually support it. All right. So I had one student who convinced me rhetorically and ethically to allow her to do an abortion speech, and she did an outstanding job, even though I wanted to veto it. Okay. So there is that. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is what is known as crap. All right. Everybody, make sure you got this in your notes. Crap. C-R-A-A-P. Don't give it to me. I don't want it. All right? Everything you submit needs to pass the crap test. Otherwise, it's just shit. All right? So, what do they mean? C means that your information is current. In today's age of technology, it should be in the last couple of years, right? It needs to be current, unless it's seminal work, and we'll talk about that later. It needs to be relevant. If your topic is about gun control in the United States, don't go bringing in information about gun controls in other countries, okay? Or if it's about gun control laws in North Carolina, yeah, you can do some compare contrast to other states, but not outside the United States, okay? So it's got to be relevant. It has to be on point, on task. It's got to be connected. All right, it has to be accurate. You're going to quote a statistic, you better make sure that statistic is accurate. You better make sure that the source of the statistic is of a good quality source and not in the outlier of sources, right? And there are some really good data points. So for instance, if you look at a continuum, we're going to put there in the middle, and if we do the old bell-shaped curve, all right, in the bell-shaped curve, we're going to have what's known as the left, and we're going to have the right. All right, the left stands for progressives, right stands for conservatives. All right, so basically progressives want to break out of the tradition and move forward. Conservatives they value the history, the traditions, and want to conserve or protect it. All right, that's the way we define it in communication studies. All right, there's going to be some people who are far left and far right. If you were to look at Fox News, the majority of the time they're going to be over here. Okay, not here, probably about there. If you're going to be looking at CNN, they're probably going to be over here. All right? If your data is only from one of these sources, then you are not utilizing accurate data. You must bring in both sides. You must bring in multiple perspectives, because that gets you into the next A, which is authoritative. If the authority, if the viewpoint is only one set of glasses in which that authority looks through, then you're going to have a bias. Okay? And that's where we get a little bit crazy with going off of facts, right? So be careful that the authority needs to be as unbiased as possible. And that's why we like science. Public speaking, we like science. We like real data, right? Even from the human condition. Social scientists have data, okay? And then the last one is positive purpose. Make sure that the person you're quoting is looking out for the good, right? And that goes back into the authoritative. That's it. Any questions before I say goodbye?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Was this good? Interesting at all?
Yes.
Oh, no, yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I bet you like the way I do history. Very short. All right. You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you, I'll keep it on if you want to come on up and ask questions privately or one-to-one.